news right off the top here. Rudy Gobert moving on to Minnesota now, and the deal includes basically 5 first-round draft picks. Utah getting Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Walker Kessler, Jared Vanderbilt, and first 4-round picks, and then including Walker Kessler. So they're getting a huge haul here for Rudy Gobert, and the initial reaction around the league, Utah rebuild. Still got Donovan Mitchell there at the moment. And then C.J. McCollum, again, 5 firsts, which makes you think, when you talk about Kevin Durant, what is he worth? But again, Rudy Gobert at this point, there has been a lot of talk, Ryan, over the last season about the contention between him and Donovan Mitchell in Utah, and if one was going to go, who would be going first? Well, Rudy's got his wish, and he's going to Minnesota.
2 teams signaling directions that are very different, Nabil. The Minnesota Timberwolves being aggressive, bringing in Rudy Gobert alongside Karl Anthony Towns. I'll be fascinated to see how it works out in a league that seemingly gets smaller and faster every year. The Minnesota Timberwolves are now huge with the Twin Towers in Rudy Gobert, the Defensive Player of the Year, and Karl Anthony Towns, arguably the most talented offensive big man in the league. So they'll play together some. They'll always probably have one of those guys on the court. So Minnesota's being aggressive. They made the playoffs a year ago. They're trying to climb the ladder in the Western Conference. In Utah, I think this is a start of potentially a full-blown rebuild. We saw Royce O'Neal go out yesterday to the Brooklyn Nets, and now one of their 2 best players, Rudy Gobert, is a Minnesota Timberwolf. And
I'm assuming they'd have to go to Karl Anthony Towns here and tell him, hey, you're moving over to the 4, right? Like, to see that fit, how do you see that working out with him and Towns at the 4-5?
So I think that'll be their alignment to start. Towns at the 4, Gobert at the 5. Gobert gets the center defensively. He's back in his rim protection. Cat's going to have to guard a little bit more on the perimeter. He's going to have to sit down in a stance and work on his mobility. So defensively, I have some concerns. Offensively, I really like it, though, because of Cat's floor spacing ability and his ability to shoot the basketball. I think you'll have Rudy Gobert rolling hard to the rim as an over-the-top lob threat, putting a lot of pressure on the rim. Cat spacing it. So I like the way it could work. And then I think with injuries, with foul trouble, it gives Chris Finch and his staff the ability to stagger those guys. They'll always have one dominant big man on the court between Cat and Gobert throughout the 48 minutes.
Yeah, it's interesting because the league went to this sense of like, hey, playing copycat ball and you go small ball for a while. But now you're starting to see the bigs are coming back, guys who are agile, guys who can do different things on the court. Rudy Gobert is one of those guys.
Last couple MVPs were won by Nikola Jokic, who Tim Connolly, the president of basketball operations, now in Minnesota, drafted when he was in Denver. Joel Embiid was an MVP candidate this year. So the league is, goes in shifts. There are trends and waves. Clearly, Minnesota feels like they can load up with 2 7-footers who are talented, one great defensively, one great offensively. Can they make it work? That remains to be seen, but certainly the Timberwolves think it can. They were super aggressive in this package for Rudy Gobert.
And you mentioned earlier two teams going in different directions. Utah now opening up maybe that rebuild, and Donovan Mitchell. And now teams might be like, okay, well, let's call him, see what he's at, really.
I think that'll absolutely happen. In fact, I expect that the Jazz's phones are already ringing off the hooks with O'Neal, who was, a solid player, but a role player out, but especially now with Gobert out. And the package that Utah received in return was more forward-looking. Yes, they did get Malik Beasley and Patrick Beverley, who can play now. Walker Kessler wasn't in Minneapolis long. Hopefully he didn't buy a place there. And that trade can happen today because it's just his draft rights, Nabil, getting rerouted from Minnesota now to Utah and the picks. But this is a forward-looking move for Utah. This is the kind of move that historically has signaled a rebuild. So we'll see if they'll keep going with Donovan Mitchell, or if they use some of those assets to pivot to try to rebuild on the fly around Mitchell and keep him happy in Utah.
But what teams do you think would be particularly interested in Mitchell?
We've heard Miami. We've heard the Miami Heat. They have Tyler Herro, who is now up for an extension. They play the same position. Miami has other assets as well. We know Pat Riley and Andy Ellisberg tend to be aggressive in trying to get stars, especially stars in their prime. We also know that there's a relationship now between the Jazz with Dwayne Wade, minority owner, and his former franchise, the Miami Heat. So we'll see. I think that's a destination that would be attractive to Donovan Mitchell in his group if they were to leave Utah. But anytime you have a star like Mitchell in his prime, time under contract. The phone rings a lot. Yeah. And, so that'll be the second part of this. We'll see if there is a second leg. Gobert is out. Is Mitchell next?
Yeah, Gobert going to Minnesota in this deal that's breaking right now with the Utah Jazz.